Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best English Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and I am so happy to have you with me today. You know, when I think about the many students I've worked with over the years, I realize that the biggest obstacle for many is not grammar, it's not vocabulary, and it's not even a difficult accent. The biggest problem is often just fear. It's the fear of opening your mouth and saying something wrong. It's the fear of a conversation partner speaking too fast and leaving you with nothing to say. It's the fear that all the hard work you've put into learning English will just disappear in a single terrifying moment of conversation. If you have ever felt this way, please know that you're not alone. That feeling is a completely normal and natural part of the journey. But today, we're going to talk about how to move past that fear and how to unlock the English that is already inside of you. Today's topic is Speak Smart, Learn Fast. This is a new way of thinking about your English skills. It's not about being perfect, and it's not about knowing every single word. It's about being smart with the English you already have and using every conversation as a chance to learn something new. We're going on a long, detailed journey together, all in one continuous story, to understand how this works. We will meet a friend of mine, a truly dedicated learner named Alex. Alex went through this exact journey. He was a brilliant person in his field, a computer programmer with a mind like a steel trap. He could read technical manuals in English without a problem. He could write complex code and communicate intricate ideas through email. But when he was in a room full of people talking, his brain would feel like a computer that had just frozen. The words were all there, but the speak button just wouldn't work. The fear of making a mistake, of a long, awkward pause, was a silent and powerful barrier. By the end of our conversation today, you will not only understand why this happens, but you will have a whole set of tools, tips, and practice exercises all woven into Alex's story so that you can start speaking smart and learning fast yourself. Alex came to me one day, looking very defeated. He had just come back from a work conference where he had felt completely invisible. He described a big room full of people, all mingling and chatting in small groups. "Sophia," he said, "I know all the right words. I can write a detailed report about my work. I can explain my project to a team. But when I was there, everyone was just chatting. They were talking about the football game, their weekend plans, a movie they saw. The conversations were so fast, so full of casual slang, and they jumped from one topic to the next without a break. I just couldn't keep up. I felt like I had nothing to say." He told me about one specific painful moment. He was standing with two of his colleagues, one from England and one from Canada. They were laughing about a TV show. Alex knew the show. He had even watched a few episodes. But he just stood there, smiling and nodding, feeling like a ghost in the room. He felt a deep sense of shame and loneliness, like he was an outsider looking in on a club he desperately wanted to join. This, my friends, is a classic example of the power of small talk. Small talk is not just about talking about small things. It's about building connections, showing interest, and warming up your speaking muscles. It's the first step to speaking smart, and it was Alex's biggest fear. The problem wasn't his English, it was his approach. He was treating small talk like a serious test, but it's really just a friendly game of catch. The goal isn't to hit a home run, it's just to keep the ball in the air. So, I told Alex a new way to think about it. I told him he didn't need to be the one to tell a big joke or a long story. He just needed to learn how to throw the ball back to the other person. And the best way to do that is to learn the art of asking questions. This is the first and most powerful tool in your Speak Smart, Learn Fast toolbox. Asking questions is a smart move because it takes the pressure off of you and puts it on the other person. It shows that you are interested in what they have to say, and it keeps the conversation going without you having to come up with a lot of complex sentences. I gave Alex a list of simple, easy questions he could use. Questions like, "What are you working on today?" Or, "How was your weekend?" Or, "Have you ever been to a place like this before?" I told him that he didn't need to say anything perfect. He just needed to show that he was a part of the conversation. The goal of a question is not to be brilliant. The goal is simply to be a part of the exchange. We sat together in a quiet corner of the coffee shop and practiced. I would pretend to be a colleague at a coffee break, and he would practice asking a simple question. We started with, "How was your weekend?" And he would say it in a flat, nervous voice. I would say, "It was great. I went to a concert." And then he would just stare at me, his mind completely blank, because he didn't have a second question ready. He was so focused on saying the first question correctly that he hadn't prepared for the response. I could see the panic in his eyes, the same panic he felt at the conference. So we practiced a simple follow-up question. "Oh, a concert? What kind of music was it?" Or, "Who did you go with?" I explained to him that conversations are like a tennis game. The ball goes back and forth. You don't have to hit a powerful shot every time. Sometimes a soft, easy return is all you need to keep the game alive. The person who serves the ball isn't the most important person on the court. It's the person who can hit the ball back that keeps the game alive. This was a huge shift for Alex. He realized he didn't have to be a star player. He just had to be a part of the game. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to be present. We practiced this over and over. I'd give him a topic, and he would practice asking a chain of 3 questions. The first time, he was very slow and hesitant. The second time, he was a little faster. By the 10th time, he was asking the questions with a little more confidence and a little more rhythm. He was training his brain to move from one question to the next without the long, awkward pause that used to freeze him. He was learning to be a conversational partner, not just an observer. For your own practice, I want you to try this simple exercise. We'll call it the question chain. Or think of a simple topic like your favorite food. Now, write down a chain of 3 simple questions you could ask someone about their favorite food. For example, what is your favorite food? Oh, that's interesting. What does it taste like? And where did you try it for the first time? By preparing these simple chains of questions, you will train your brain to have an automatic response ready so that the fear of a blank mind never has to stop you again. It is a powerful way to speak smart and learn fast because you are using what you already know to keep the conversation going and to learn more about the person you're talking to. This is not about memorizing lines like an actor. It's about training your brain to think in a new way, to be prepared for the conversation to continue, not to end after your first sentence. This small but powerful change completely transformed Alex's mindset about speaking. He went from feeling like he had nothing to say to feeling like he had a powerful tool in his hand. He was still a little nervous, but the fear was no longer paralyzing. He was no longer just a passive listener, waiting for a conversation to end. He was an active participant, always ready to throw the ball back into the game. He began to see every person as a new story waiting to be told, and he, with his simple questions, was the person who was ready to hear it. It was a beautiful, powerful shift, and it was just the beginning of his journey to speak smart and learn fast. As he started to use this new skill, he ran into another major problem. A problem I hear about all the time: the fear of his own voice. He came to me a week later and confessed, "Sophia, the questions are helping, but I'm still so nervous. When I open my mouth, I can hear my own accent, and I'm afraid that if I ask a question, they will just hear my accent and think my English is bad. I'm afraid of saying the wrong tense or using the wrong word. I try to think of a question, but then 100 other thoughts rush in. Is my pronunciation right? What if I say a plural word as a singular? What if they don't understand me?" All of these worries get so loud in my head that I just freeze up again. This, my friends, is the second big barrier to speaking smart: the need for perfection. Many of us feel that we can only speak when we are 100% sure we are correct. We believe that every sentence we say must be flawless, with no mistakes in grammar, no flaws in pronunciation, and no hint of an accent. But this is like a chef who refuses to cook until he has every single ingredient in the world. He will never cook. You have to learn to cook with the ingredients you have, and you have to learn to be okay with a few mistakes. This is the difference between speaking with confidence and speaking with perfection. Speaking with confidence means you are willing to make a few mistakes to get your message across. It means you understand that the message itself is more important than the perfect delivery. I shared a long and detailed story with Alex about a friend of mine, a woman from Brazil named Maria. Maria was a very confident, funny, and outgoing person in her native language, Portuguese. She was a brilliant graphic designer, and her ideas were always so creative and full of life. But in English, she was so quiet. She was so afraid of making a mistake that she would just stay silent. I saw her in a meeting once where her team was brainstorming ideas for a new marketing campaign. Maria had a brilliant idea, a truly original and creative one, and she was clearly excited about it. I could see her on the edge of her seat, wanting to speak. She opened her mouth to say something, but then she hesitated. I could almost hear the internal monologue playing in her head. She was probably thinking, "Is this the right word? Is my grammar correct? What if they can't understand me?" The other colleagues, who were all native speakers, were talking over each other with a rapid stream of ideas. She waited for a pause, but the pause never came. Her brilliant idea just disappeared into the silence. After the meeting, I talked to her. She was so upset. "Sophia," she said, "I had an amazing idea, something I know they would have loved. I wanted to say, I have a new idea for the campaign, but I was so afraid I would say something like, I have a new idea to the campaign, or something else that was wrong. So I just stayed silent. Now they've moved on, and my idea is gone forever." Her boss came to her a few minutes later and said, "Maria, you are so quiet. We need to hear your ideas. Your perspective is so important to us." Maria felt terrible. She didn't feel encouraged. She felt exposed. She felt like her silence was a sign of her failure, and her boss's comment was just a confirmation of that. I told Alex, and I told Maria, that her boss didn't want to hear perfect grammar. Her boss wanted to hear her ideas. The most important part of speaking is the message, not the perfection of the words. I told Alex, your accent is a part of who you are. It's a part of your journey. It shows where you come from. It's a testament to your hard work. Don't be afraid of it. Be proud of it. A native speaker's accent isn't a problem, so why should yours be? The only people who would judge a language learner for their accent are people who have never had the courage to learn a second language themselves. I told him that the most beautiful part of his conversation is not the perfect grammar. It is the courage to speak at all. It is the courage to share his ideas, his thoughts, his questions, and his stories, even with a few mistakes here and there. A mistake is not a failure. It's a sign that you are trying, that you are pushing yourself, that you are actively learning. So, how do we start to practice speaking with confidence, not perfection? How do we stop seeing mistakes as a reason to be silent and start seeing them as a reason to learn? We can start with a very simple and powerful exercise. We'll call it the mistake log. This is a very targeted way to take the fear out of making mistakes. It's not about making a list of your failures. It's about turning every single mistake into a valuable learning opportunity. For the next few days, I want you to make a conscious effort to speak in English, whether it's to a friend, a language partner, or even to yourself in the mirror. And when you make a mistake, don't feel bad. Instead, I want you to pause for a moment, and I want you to write it down in a small notebook. Here's exactly how it works. On one side of the page, you'll write down the mistake you made. For example, if you say, I have a questioning, you'll write that down. Then, on the other side of the page, you'll write down the correct way to say it. I have a question. You can even add a small note to yourself like, remember, a question is a noun, not a verb. By doing this, you are not just getting rid of the mistake. You are turning a moment of fear into a moment of learning. You are training your brain to see mistakes not as a failure, but as a valuable piece of data. You are taking a negative emotion and turning it into a positive action. This small but powerful mental shift will slowly but surely take the fear out of speaking and allow you to speak with more confidence and courage. You will start to feel in control of your learning. I remember when Alex started doing this. He came to me with a notebook full of mistakes. Some were small, like saying, I goed instead of I went. Some were bigger, like using the wrong preposition. But every single one of them was a moment of learning. He wasn't ashamed of the notebook, he was proud of it. He said, Sophia, every mistake I write down is a mistake I won't make again. This notebook isn't a list of my failures. It's a map of my progress. This was a huge change in his mindset. He was no longer afraid of making mistakes because he had a plan for them. He had a way to turn every single one into a powerful learning experience. And this, my friends, is the most important part of speaking smart. It's about understanding that the path to fluency is not a straight line without a single mistake. It's a winding road full of bumps, wrong turns, and moments of learning. The goal is not to avoid the bumps. The goal is to learn how to drive on them with confidence. As his confidence grew, he ran into another major problem. He was still struggling to keep up with the natural pace of conversation. He came to me with a new frustration. "Sophia," he said, "I'm not so afraid anymore and I can ask questions. But when it's my turn to speak, I feel so slow. My mind is still working in my native language, translating what I want to say, and then I have to think of the English words, and then I have to put them in the right order. By the time I have a full sentence ready, the conversation has moved on. I feel like my brain is a computer that is running 100 programs at once, and it just can't keep up." This is a completely normal and very common problem for B1 and B2 learners. You have enough vocabulary to express your ideas, but the process of building a sentence from scratch in real time is just too slow. This is where we need to learn to be a little bit sneaky. We need to learn how to be a language thief. This is a key part of speaking smart and learning fast. It's not just about what you can say, it's about what you can steal. I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean it in a very good way. You have to become a language detective, always listening for patterns and phrases, not just individual words, and then you can use those phrases to build your own sentences. You don't have to be a perfect artist who creates every sentence from nothing. You just have to be a smart thief who finds the best parts of the language that is all around you and uses them for yourself. I told Alex about an experience I once had in a coffee shop. I was sitting at a table, working, when I overheard two women talking at the table next to me. The conversation was about a new movie they had just seen. One woman said, "I saw that new movie, and I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest." Her friend said, "Oh, really? I actually really liked it. I thought the acting was pretty good." I told Alex, "Did you hear that?" I heard 3 very useful phrases that you can use in any conversation. I'm not a huge fan of, I actually really liked it, and it was pretty good. You can use those phrases to talk about anything. You can use them to talk about a book, a restaurant, a new song, or even a new computer program at your job. You don't have to come up with a new sentence from scratch. The language is all around you, just waiting to be stolen. This was a huge aha moment for Alex. He realized he didn't have to be a perfect artist. He just had to be a smart thief. He had to listen for the treasure that was all around him. This is a smart way to learn and speak because it reduces the cognitive load on your brain. Instead of trying to think of the grammar, the vocabulary, and the sentence structure all at once, you are simply borrowing a pre-built structure and plugging in your own words. It's like using a template to build a website. You don't have to design every single piece. You just have to fill in the blanks. And by doing this, you are training your brain to think in English, not to translate. You are learning the natural rhythm and flow of the language, not just the individual words. I remember when Alex started to practice this. He had a small notebook with him at all times, a little journal that was his language thief log. He was at a team meeting, and his manager was talking about a new project. His manager said, "We are all looking forward to this project, and we are going to get it done by the end of the month." Alex, in his notebook, wrote down the phrases ought, looking forward to, and by the end of the month. He didn't interrupt the meeting, and he didn't worry about understanding every single word. He just focused on stealing those 2 phrases. Later that day, he used the first phrase in a conversation with a colleague. He said, "I'm looking forward to the weekend." His colleague didn't even notice that he had just learned that phrase. They just thought it was a completely natural part of his speech. It was a huge success. So, for your own practice, I want you to try this exercise. We'll call it the language thief method. When you are listening to a podcast, a TV show, or even a conversation, I want you to have a small notebook ready. Your only goal is to listen for a single, useful phrase that you can use later. For example, if you hear a speaker say, "I'm looking forward to the weekend," you can write that phrase down. Then, I want you to try to use that phrase in your own sentence. You can say, "I'm looking forward to my vacation," or "I'm looking forward to seeing my friends." You are not just learning new words. You are learning new patterns of speech. This is how you start to speak smart and learn fast, by using the language you hear to build your own sentences. You are turning a passive listening experience into an active learning one. This will not only help you to speak more fluently, but it will also help you to listen more effectively. Your brain will start to listen for the phrases, the patterns, and the rhythm of the language, not just the individual words. You will be able to follow conversations more easily, and you will be able to respond more quickly. This is the power of being a smart thief. It's not about being the best artist, it's about being the smartest one. As his confidence grew, a new challenge emerged. He realized that it was one thing to steal a short phrase, but it was a much harder thing to build a long, complex thought from that phrase. He came to me with a new frustration. "Sophia," he said, "I have all of these phrases in my notebook. I can say, 'I'm looking forward to the weekend,' and that's great. But what if I want to say more than that? What if I want to tell a story about my weekend? My mind still feels so slow. I'll say one sentence, and then there's a long, awkward pause while I try to build the next one in my head. I feel like my sentences are like a series of disconnected islands, and I can't find the bridges to connect them." This is a completely normal and very common problem for B1 and B2 learners. You have the words, you have the phrases, but the process of building a complex flowing thought in real time is still very difficult. Your brain is trying to do too much at once. It's trying to think of the story, and it's trying to find the words, and it's trying to put them in the right order, all at the same time. This is where we need to introduce a powerful new tool. A tool that will act as a bridge between your ideas. This is the scaffolding technique. Think of a scaffold like a temporary structure that helps you build something bigger. When you see a tall building being constructed, you always see a scaffold around it. The scaffold isn't the final building, but it's a necessary tool that helps the workers to build the walls and the windows and the roof. In English, a scaffold is a simple sentence starter or a phrase that helps you build a more complex thought. Instead of trying to build a complex sentence from scratch, you can use a simple scaffold to get started. It's a way to buy yourself time and to sound more natural at the same time. I remember when Alex and I were working on this together. He was trying to tell me a story about his weekend. He would start with a long pause, and then he would say, I went to the park, and I saw a dog." The story was a series of disconnected facts, and it was very slow and choppy. It was difficult for him to say, and it was difficult for me to follow. His brain was trying to do too much at once. I told him, "Alex, your brain is trying to do too much at once. It's trying to think of the story and it's trying to find the words, and it's trying to put them in the right order. Let's make it easier. Let's use a scaffold. I gave him a simple scaffold to start his stories. The most interesting thing that happened was we practiced with his story about the park. He started with the scaffold. The most interesting thing that happened was I went to the park and I saw a dog. The sentence was still a little choppy, but it was 1,000 times better. The scaffold had given him a starting point, and it had given his brain the time it needed to find the next words. The conversation was moving. There are so many simple scaffolds you can learn that will act as a bridge between your thoughts. For example, if you want to give your opinion on something, you can use the scaffold, I think that, or, in my opinion, or, from my point of view. These phrases are like a signal to the other person that you are about to share your thoughts, and they give your brain a few extra seconds to prepare the rest of the sentence. If you want to talk about the future, you can use the scaffold. I'm planning to, or my goal is to, or I hope to. These little scaffolds are like the guardrails on a road. They don't tell you where to go, but they keep you from falling off the road. They give you the confidence to start speaking, even when you're not sure where you're going to end up. I remember another time when Alex was in a meeting at work. A colleague had just finished a long explanation about a new software feature. Alex had an idea he wanted to share, but he was worried about starting the sentence. He felt a wave of that familiar anxiety. He had an idea for a solution, but he wasn't sure how to start it. In the past, he would have just stayed silent, but this time, he remembered the scaffolding technique. He took a deep breath and said, "From my point of view, we could try to solve this problem by adding a new button to the user interface." The sentence wasn't perfect, but it was clear, it was confident, and it was 1,000 times better than silence. His brain, which had been trying to build the whole sentence from scratch, was now just focused on finding the right words to add to the scaffold he had already built. The conversation continued, and his idea was heard. This is the power of scaffolding. It is a way to make your brain work for you, not against you. For your own practice, I want you to try this. We'll call it the Scaffold Challenge. Pick a topic, any topic at all, like your favorite movie. Now, I want you to try to talk about it for 1 minute. And I want you to try to use at least 3 different scaffolds. You can start with, I think that the main character was very brave. Then you can add, from my point of view, the ending was a little sad. And you can finish with, I'm planning to watch it again with my friends. This exercise will help you train your brain to use these simple but powerful phrases to build your thoughts. You will find that your speech becomes more natural, more confident, and less choppy. This is how you speak smart and learn fast, by using these simple tools to build more complex ideas. You are learning how to build bridges between your sentences, so that you can create a smooth, flowing conversation. This will not only help you to speak more fluently, but it will also help you to listen more effectively. When you start to listen for these scaffolds in the speech of others, you will be able to follow their thoughts more easily. You will be able to anticipate what they are going to say next, and you will be able to respond more quickly. This is the power of being a smart speaker. It's not about being the fastest talker. It's about being the most prepared. As his confidence grew, a new and more subtle challenge emerged. He realized that while his sentences were getting better, his conversations were still missing a key ingredient: human connection. He came to me with a new observation. "Sophia," he said, "I can ask questions now, and I can use the scaffolds to give my opinion. But when I try to tell a story about my life, I feel like I'm just reading from a list. I tell people about what I did over the weekend, and they just say, 'Oh,' and then the conversation ends. It feels like my stories are boring, and I don't know how to make them interesting." This is a completely normal and very common problem for B1 and B2 learners. You have the words to describe what happened, but you don't yet have the tools to make your listener feel what you felt. You are giving them the facts, but you are not giving them the emotion. And a conversation without emotion is like a meal without any flavor. This is where we need to learn a new and powerful tool: the power of storytelling. Storytelling is a huge part of human communication, and it's a very smart way to practice your English. A good story isn't about using big words. It's about using emotion, simple details, and a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's about making your listener feel like they were there with you, experiencing what you experienced. The goal isn't to be a perfect narrator. The goal is to be a human being, sharing a human experience. I remember Alex was trying to tell me a story about a bad day he had at work. His story was a series of facts, a list of events. He said, "My boss was mad. The computer didn't work. I had to stay late. It was bad." The story was a list of ingredients, but it wasn't a delicious meal. It was difficult for me to feel what he felt. I said, "Alex, that's a good start. But your story is like a list of ingredients. Let's make it into a delicious meal. Let's add some emotion, some description, and some feeling." I told him that the most important part of a story isn't the facts. It's the feeling. So we worked on the same story together. I asked him, "How did you feel when your boss was mad?" He paused for a moment, thinking about it. He said, "I felt a little bit scared and very stressed." I said, "That's perfect. Let's add that to the story." Then I asked, "How did you feel when the computer didn't work?" He said, "I felt so frustrated and helpless." I said, "Yes, that's it. Let's add that to the story." We practiced telling the story with these simple additions. He started to say, "My boss was so angry today. I felt a little bit scared and very stressed. Then my computer just stopped working, and I felt so frustrated and helpless. I had to stay at work very late." Zrenia. The story was the same, but the emotion and the feeling made it completely different. It was no longer a list of facts. It was a human experience. I could feel his frustration, his stress, and his tiredness. The conversation didn't stop with a simple "oh." We talked about how he dealt with his stress, and we talked about what happened with his boss. The story had created a bridge between us. It had created a connection. This is a smart way to learn and speak because it forces you to think about the purpose of your words, not just the correctness of your words. It forces you to think about how you are making your listener feel, not just about how you are speaking. By focusing on emotion, you are learning to use simple descriptive words that are incredibly powerful. You are learning to use your English not just to communicate information, but to connect with another human being. I remember another time Alex was telling me about going to the beach for the first time. His original story was, I went to the beach. I saw the ocean. The sun was hot. I went in the water. Again, a list of facts. I said, Alex, let's make this a real story. How did you feel when you saw the ocean for the first time? Was the water cold or warm? Was the sun just hot, or was it something more? He thought about it for a moment and said, the sun was so warm on my skin. The water was a little cold at first, but then it felt so refreshing. He added, when I saw the ocean, it was the first time I had ever seen something so big. I felt small and a little bit amazed. The story was the same, but the emotion and the feeling made it completely different. I could feel the sun on my skin and the cool water on my feet. I could feel his sense of wonder. The story had become a powerful memory, not just a list of events. So, for your own practice, I want you to try this. We'll call it the Storytelling Challenge. Think of a simple story from your life. It could be about something that happened today, or it could be about a funny thing that happened last week. Now, I want you to tell that story to a friend, a language partner, or even to yourself in the mirror. But this time, I want you to focus on the emotion. I want you to add at least 3 emotional words to your story. Words like happy, sad, scared, excited, frustrated, or amazed. You will find that adding these simple words will make your story 1,000 times more interesting and will help you connect with your listener on a much deeper level. This exercise will not only help you to speak more fluently, but it will also help you to listen more effectively. When you start to listen for these emotional words in the speech of others, you will be able to follow their thoughts more easily. You will be able to understand not just what they are saying, but how they are feeling. This is the power of being a smart speaker. It's not about being the fastest talker. It's about being the most human. As his confidence grew, a new and more subtle challenge emerged. He realized that while his stories had great emotion, the delivery of his words still felt a little flat and unnatural. He felt like his voice was a little bit like a robot. He was saying the right words, but he wasn't saying them with the right music. He came to me with a new observation. Sophia, he said, I can tell a story and I can use emotional words, but when I listen to native speakers, their voices have a rhythm, a melody. My voice just sounds flat. I feel like I'm saying the right things, but I'm not saying them the right way. This is a completely normal and very common problem for B1 and B2 learners. You have the grammar, you have the vocabulary, but you don't yet have the music of the language. This is where we need to learn a new and powerful tool, the power of rhythm, stress, and intonation. This is a key part of speaking smart. It's not just about what you say, it's about how you say it. English is a stress-timed language, which means we don't stress every word equally. We create a beat, a rhythm, by stressing the most important words in a sentence, the nouns, the main verbs, the adjectives, and the adverbs. We say the less important words, the function words like a, the, is, and on, much more quickly and quietly. This creates a natural rise and fall, a beat just like music. Without that beat, your speech can be difficult for a native speaker to follow, even if they understand all the words. It's the difference between hearing a drum beat and just hearing a series of random sounds. The drum beat gives the sounds a pattern and a meaning. Another crucial part of this music is intonation, which is the rise and fall of your voice. intonation is what helps you communicate emotion and intent. For example, a question almost always ends with your voice rising. You know how. Are you coming? Nah, your voice goes up on the word coming. A statement, on the other hand, almost always ends with your voice falling. I am coming. Your voice goes down on the word coming. When you don't use this intonation, your speech can sound flat, and it can be difficult for a native speaker to know if you are asking a question or making a statement. It can also make your speech sound a little bit robotic. I remember I was working with Alex on this very topic. He was practicing a simple sentence. I like the coffee. He would say it. I like the coffee. He was putting equal stress on every single word. The sentence was grammatically perfect, but it was missing the music. It sounded a little stiff, like a simple statement of fact, not an expression of a feeling. I said, Alex, that's not how we say it. We say, I like the coffee. I told him to clap his hands on the stressed words. I like the coffee. This simple exercise helped him to feel the rhythm of the sentence. He started to understand that the English language has a beat, just like music. The more you listen to this beat, the more you will start to hear it in your own voice and in the voices of others. We also talked about how changing the stress on a single word can completely change the meaning of a sentence. For example, if you say, I like the coffee, with the stress on I, you are saying that you, and not someone else, like the coffee. But if you say, I like the coffee, with the stress on coffee, you are saying that you like the coffee, not the tea or the soda. The words are the same, but the meaning is completely different because of the stress. This is the power of the music of the language. It's the emotional key that unlocks a deeper level of understanding. I remember another time Alex was telling me about a new movie he had seen. He said, I thought the movie was good. I said, did you really think it was good? He said, yes, I really liked it. I said, then why didn't your voice tell me that? Let's try it again. This time, I want you to say it with a little more excitement. He tried again, and this time he said, I thought the movie was good. With his voice rising on the word good. His voice had the music now, and I could feel his excitement. The words were the same, but the meaning was completely different because of the intonation. This is a smart way to learn and speak, because it improves clarity and helps you sound more natural, which in turn boosts your confidence and makes you easier to understand. You are not just learning to communicate information. You are learning to communicate with emotion and intent. For your own practice, I want you to try this. We'll call it the clap and speak exercise. When you are listening to a podcast or a TV show, I want you to listen for the stressed words. Now, I want you to try to clap your hands on those stressed words. You will start to feel the natural rhythm of the language. Then, when you are speaking, whether to a friend or to yourself, I want you to try to clap on the stressed words. You don't have to be perfect, but by doing this, you will start to train your brain to speak with a more natural rhythm. This is a very powerful way to make your English sound more fluid and more confident. This is the part of the journey where your English stops sounding like a list of words and starts sounding like a human conversation. As he got better at all these things, a final, very important question came up. All of these skills were great, but how could he practice them consistently? How could he keep the momentum going when I wasn't there to help him? He came to me and said, "Sophia, all of these things you've taught me, asking questions, not being afraid of mistakes, stealing phrases, using scaffolds, and finding the rhythm, they're all working. But I feel like I'm only practicing when I'm in a conversation. How can I keep this going every day, even when I'm alone? I want to get better, but I don't always have a partner to talk to." This is the final and perhaps most crucial challenge for B1 and B2 learners. You have all the tools, but you need to build your own workshop. This is where we need to talk about the power of creating your own language lab. A language lab is not a place with a lot of expensive equipment. It's simply a place where you can practice your English in a safe, low-pressure environment. It can be your bedroom, your car, your kitchen, or even a park bench. The only tools you need are your phone and a small notebook. This is a smart way to learn because it turns every moment of your day into a potential learning opportunity. It makes practice a habit, not a chore. It gives you the freedom to make mistakes without feeling judged, to experiment with new phrases without feeling embarrassed, and to build your confidence in a safe and supportive environment. I remember I gave Alex a very simple, step-by-step plan for creating his own language lab. The first step was to record yourself. I told him, "Alex, your own voice is the most important tool you have. You need to get used to hearing yourself speak English. You need to be able to listen to your own voice without feeling embarrassed or afraid." I told him to use his phone's voice recorder and to record himself telling a simple story or reading a short paragraph from a book. He didn't have to be perfect. He just had to record himself and then listen to the recording. This was a huge step for him. He told me that at first, he hated the sound of his own voice in English. He felt like it sounded strange and foreign. But over time, as he recorded himself more and more, he started to hear the improvements. He started to hear the rhythm, the stress, and the confidence in his voice. He started to love the sound of his own English. This simple act of recording himself every day, just for a few minutes, was a powerful way to build his confidence and to track his progress. The second step was to use a word bank. I told him to keep a notebook with him at all times and to write down every new word or phrase he heard. I told him not to just write down the word, but to write down the whole phrase in which he heard it. For example, if he heard the phrase, "I'm looking forward to the weekend," he would write down the whole phrase. Then, at the end of the day, he would go back to his notebook and try to use those phrases in a sentence of his own. This was a very smart way to build his active vocabulary, the words and phrases he could actually use in a conversation. He was no longer just learning words. He was learning how to use them. His notebook became a treasure chest, a word bank full of language he had stolen from the world around him. He would review it every morning, just for a few minutes, and he would feel his vocabulary growing. The third and final step was to talk to yourself. I know this sounds a little strange, but it is one of the most powerful things you can do. I told him to talk to himself in his car, in the shower, or while he was cooking dinner. He could talk about his day, his plans for the weekend, or even a movie he just saw. He could talk about anything he wanted. The only rule was that he had to do it in English. This simple act of talking to himself was a powerful way to train his brain to think in English, to build sentences without a lot of pressure, and to build his confidence in a safe environment. He was no longer translating in his head. He was thinking in English. He was creating a new and powerful habit, a habit that would serve him for the rest of his life. I remember Alex telling me about a day where he was driving to work, and he was talking to himself in English about his to-do list for the day. He wasn't perfect, and he made a few mistakes, but he was speaking. He was thinking in English. He was using the language without any fear, without any pressure. He said, "Sophia, I realized in that moment that I'm not just learning a language, I'm learning to be myself in a new language." That was a beautiful and profound realization. He had created his own language lab, and in doing so, he had given himself the freedom to be himself, to be imperfect, and to be a continuous learner. So, for your own practice, I want you to try this. We'll call it the Language Lab Challenge. And for the next week, I want you to dedicate just 10 minutes a day to your own language lab. You can spend 2 minutes recording yourself, 3 minutes reviewing your word bank, and 5 minutes talking to yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be consistent. This is the most powerful and most personal part of the Speak Smart, Learn Fast journey. It's about taking ownership of your own learning, and it's about giving yourself the space and the time to practice without any fear or pressure. A few months after he had started his language lab, Alex had to go to another work conference, and this time he was ready. This was not the same Alex who had stood in a corner, smiling and nodding, feeling invisible. This was a new Alex, an Alex who had a toolbox full of skills and a mindset of a smart speaker. He told me the story later, and I could feel the pride in his voice as he described it. He walked into the big, crowded room, but this time he didn't feel that familiar sense of panic. He felt a sense of quiet confidence, like a boxer who had trained for months and was finally ready for the fight. He saw a small group of colleagues from different countries talking near the coffee station. In the past, he would have just walked by, but this time he walked directly toward them. The conversation was already flowing when he arrived. They were talking about a new technical report. One of the colleagues, a woman from Ireland, was speaking very quickly. In the past, Alex would have felt overwhelmed and would have just given up. But this time, he was a language thief and a smart listener. He wasn't trying to understand every single word. He was listening for the rhythm and the main ideas. He heard the phrase, "on the other hand," and he knew that the speaker was about to give a contrasting idea. He heard the phrase, "to sum up," and he knew that she was about to give a conclusion. He didn't understand everything, but he understood the structure of the conversation, and that was enough. When there was a natural pause, he used his first tool. He used a question to enter the conversation, a simple, low-pressure way to show he was engaged. He said to the Irish colleague, "That's a very interesting point. What are your thoughts on the next steps?" The question was not just a question. It was a powerful signal that he was a participant, not just an observer. The colleague looked at him, smiled, and started to talk about the next steps. Alex was in the conversation. As the conversation continued, another colleague, a man from Germany, said something that Alex didn't quite understand. In the past, Alex would have just nodded and pretended he understood. But this time, he used a new skill. He used his courage to embrace mistakes. He said with a calm and confident voice, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that last part. Could you explain what you meant by synergy?" He was not afraid of the silence, and he was not afraid of showing that he didn't understand something. He knew that a mistake was just a moment of learning. The German colleague smiled and said, "Of course," and explained the term in a simpler way. Alex had just turned a moment of potential embarrassment into a moment of connection. Later, the conversation shifted to a lighter topic, a new TV show that everyone was talking about. Alex had seen the show. In the past, he would have just listened and smiled, but this time he decided to tell a short story about the show. His story was not a list of facts. It was a human experience. He said, using a simple scaffold to start, "From my point of view, the main character was so funny. There was a scene where she had to give a presentation, and she was so nervous and awkward. I felt so bad for her, but I also felt like I could really relate to her." He used his storytelling skills, using simple emotional words to make his story more human. His colleagues laughed, and one of them said, "Yes, I know exactly what you mean." His story had created a powerful connection. As the conversation was wrapping up, Alex said something that truly made me proud. He used a new skill he had learned from his language lab. He used his pronunciation and rhythm to make his English sound more natural. He said, "I'm so glad I came to this conference. It's been really great to meet all of you." He didn't just say the words, he said them with the right rhythm and the right stress. He was no longer a robot, he was a human being, speaking with confidence and rhythm. His words had a beat, and they had a soul. This, my friends, is the culmination of our Speak Smart, Learn Fast journey. Alex's success was not because he suddenly became perfect. His success was because he stopped chasing perfection and started to use his English strategically. He learned to use the tools he had and to build on them every day. He went from being a passive listener who was afraid to speak to an active participant who was confident, prepared, and brave. He learned that speaking smart isn't about being the best. It's about being the most strategic. It's about using the tools you have a little bit at a time to build a more confident and more connected you. I hope this journey gives you a powerful sense of hope and motivation. The most important lesson of all is this: your English is already good enough. Yes, you heard me correctly. Your English, with its beautiful accent, with its few grammar mistakes here and there, and with its growing vocabulary, is already good enough. The problem is not your English. The problem is often the courage to use it. The problem is often the fear that holds you back from being an active participant in a conversation. We have spent all of this time together learning the tools and the strategies, but the most important tool of all is not in your notebook or on your phone. It is in your heart. It is your courage. Think of learning to speak English like learning to ride a bicycle. You can read 100 books about how to ride a bicycle. You can watch 1,000 videos about how to ride a bicycle. But you will never, ever learn how to ride a bicycle until you get on the bike, with all of its wobbles and all of its falls, and you just start to pedal. You will fall down. You will make mistakes. But every single time you fall, you will learn something new. You will learn how to balance. You will learn how to pedal a little bit harder. You will learn how to steer. And slowly, little by little, you will find your balance, and you will find your confidence. The same is true for speaking English. You can learn all the grammar rules in the world, and you can memorize all the vocabulary words you want. But you will never, ever become a confident speaker until you open your mouth and you just start to speak. You will make mistakes. You will say the wrong word. You will use the wrong tense. You will have a long, awkward pause. But every single time you do that, you will learn something new. You will learn how to get back up. You will learn how to keep the conversation going. You will learn how to be a part of the conversation. This is the final and most beautiful message of Speak Smart, Learn Fast. It is a philosophy that teaches you that your English journey is not about reaching a perfect destination. It is about enjoying the process of learning. It is about having the courage to fall down. And it is about having the wisdom to learn from every single fall. It is about understanding that your voice, with all of its imperfections, is a powerful and beautiful thing. It is a voice that has a story to tell, and it is a voice that deserves to be heard. My friend Alex, the person we have been on this journey with, is not a perfect speaker today. He still makes mistakes. He still has a strong accent. But he is a confident speaker. He is a person who is not afraid to open his mouth and speak. He is a person who is not afraid to be a part of the conversation. And he is a person who is always learning and always growing. He found his courage, and in doing so, he found his voice. And you, my friend, can do the same. You have everything you need. You have the tools, you have the strategies, and you have the courage that is already inside of you. All you have to do is take that first step. All you have to do is get on the bike and just start to pedal. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be brave. I hope this journey has given you a sense of hope, a sense of courage, and a sense of empowerment. I hope it has taught you that your English is a journey, not a destination. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This has been the Best English Podcast, and I'm Sophia. Until next time, keep listening, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep speaking with courage. You've got this.